What I want to share with you this morning is something that's very, in my perspective, very appropriate, and this is a very auspicious time of year too to talk about retailing for a number of reasons. Of course, as you know, this is the start of the supposed shopping season for those of you who don't use the internet to shop. If you do use the internet to shop, you've been doing it all year long anyway. Secondly, last month, the South Coast Plaza celebrated its 50th anniversary, and earlier in the year, Fashion Island celebrated its 50th. This fall, Brea Mall celebrates its 40th anniversary, and I'm still paying bills from my daughter's wedding 12 years ago. So that's kind of where retailing sort of fits in with all of this. As Janice said, I am an urban geographer and planner by background. You probably think that means I know the population of Yorba Linda. It's somewhere around 67,000, but I understand a few young people left for college this year and a couple of others got married and somebody might have had a baby, so who cares? This being OLLI, I have to give you the requisite disclaimer that earlier in my career, I did some consulting work for a number of cities on retail issues and retail planning. I also worked for a number of private firms, major companies that you would have been familiar with sometime in the past. But most of those firms have now either gone bankrupt or merged with other firms, even though one of them had Lucky in the name of its company. So that gives you something of my background. So anything that I share with you today is not an endorsement of where you should shop or whether you should buy stock in any of the firms that may be mentioned. Is strictly for informational and entertainment purposes, and that's why I'm here this morning or this afternoon. By the way, if you have any questions afterward or you disagree with anything I say, my email's on there. At least it'll be in effect for another hour and a half or so. There are many different forms that retailing on the retail landscape take. We encounter them almost on a daily basis. We pass by many different kinds of retail centers, often not giving them much notice at all. Some are familiar names, and some are less familiar. Some are busy, some appear to be rather underutilized. And what I want to do for today is to share with you about 5 themes. And the first of these major themes is part of the overview, but I think it's important that we focus on gender differences in shopping behaviors, because after all, women do shop differently from men. But you all knew that anyway. The second theme I want to deal with is more of an interpretation of the retail landscape, and that is, what kind of forms do clusters of retailers take, and how are they manifest in a hierarchical pattern on the landscape, and what does each of these hierarchies tell us about why certain kinds of businesses cluster together and others do not? And behind that interpretation is not simply the numbers about how large they are, how far apart they are, or how much they sell, but rather, what are the meanings behind some of those signs and symbols on the retail landscape? Then we'll move from that to the role of the discounter. Discount firms have played a dominant role within our changing retail landscape over the last 25 years. And indeed, one of the presentations that I gave back in the early 1990s tried to anticipate and unravel that. And it's amazing in looking at the persistence of some of those change as well as the disappearance of others. And obviously in that conversation about discount retailing, we have to focus on the 3 big players: Costco, Target, and Walmart. And then finally we'll move from that to the role of internet retailing and how that is changing as well. Because one of the key themes about understanding retail is that it does change, and it has changed dramatically over time. And I think it's useful for us to try to put it together at the end with some kind of concluding thoughts about where we're all headed with this. So I want to start with a little demo here and an announcement. And the announcement's very important here because it's something like this. Attention Kmart shoppers. Attention. For the next 20 minutes, My prop disappeared. For the next 20 minutes on aisle 12, we have for you, for that time only, something new and small that fits in your pocket that you will absolutely love. It is called a pocket flip telephone. And it comes with a screen. It comes with a screen. But remember, that's only good for 20 more minutes. So you must hurry and take advantage of this opportunity now. But wait. What? They didn't come in? Notice, from the parent corporation Sears Holding Company, this store will be closing forever at 6 p.m. today. Thank you for being such loyal Kmart customers, the management team. And the blue light, of course, gets extinguished. So, where do we go from here? Well, most of you are familiar with the general arrangement of shopping centers within Orange County. And the map looks something like this. I know that the print's quite small, but you actually have a black and white copy in your packet that you can study and take a look at. There are basically about 60 dots on this map, and that represents all of the retail centers, excuse me, not 60 dots, about 90 dots on the map, representing all the retail centers of at least 250,000 square feet or larger. That means we're not including the strip malls in this map. We're not including your friendly neighborhood center. These are only the larger centers. And what you can see is that, in fact, in the middle of the map, just below this corner of what is now the Cleveland Forest, is, in fact, we have a cluster of 3 or 4 shopping centers that run basically along Jamboree and to the west that take us over toward Costa Mesa. Why there? Why so many? Why not so many in the far western edge of the county? Well, we have 2 things at work here. One is the prevalence, of course, of higher densities, and more importantly, higher income densities near that cluster of centers, which actually tend to be on the periphery of Irvine, not in Irvine, but on the periphery with Tustin, and Costa Mesa. And on the west edge, what you're really seeing is the evidence of a retail shadow. A retail shadow cast by at least 3 large centers, 2 in Cerritos, and 1 in the northeast corner of Long Beach. So the map tells us something not only about what we can visibly see, but things that we cannot see direct up. But rather than putting it together, we sort of begin the story with a particular category of retailing called GAF. G stands for general merchandise, A stands for apparel, and F stands for furnishings. Put them all together and you have what we euphemistically a generation ago called a department store. Those general merchandise stores in Orange County, of which there are about 5 dozen, fall into 3 categories, or 4 categories, and I want to say a little bit about each one for the moment. Because what I'm going to do is actually work through 12 major corporations and how they're manifest on our landscape, where they are and what's happening with some of the prominent ones. The little blue slice up at the top is, of course, your legacy or traditional department store chains. That would mean Macy's, Penny's, Sears, and Nordstrom's. As you know, some get more press than others. Moving down to the green wedge on the right are the discounters. But the discounters really come in 2 flavors, green and red. The green flavor, of course, is in fact Target, Kmart, and Walmart, and all of the different kinds of stores that are part of the Walmart group. The orange or red slice at the bottom is simply Costco and Sam's Club. Anywhere from 5 to 12 or 14% of a city's land area is in fact covered by retail. Best examples in Orange County to be bored by retail, drive Tustin Avenue through Orange someday. you will absolutely hate it. But retailing, of course, contributes a lot locally in the financial sense to communities. We have at least 7 or 8 cities in Orange County that receive more revenue from retail sales tax than they receive in property tax. And that includes such cities as Mission Viejo, Laguna Niguel, Tustin, and Brea. But retailing is also a nexus for entrepreneurialism, particularly among new immigrants. The place where you can get a foothold and set up a noodle shop or run a small price point discounter. Retailing also shares space with all sorts of manners of restaurants. And even using the term restaurant is sometimes a stretch. We'll just call them eating and drinking and running places where you can bop in, grab it, bop out, and hopefully not get sick too soon afterward. Finally then, retailing is an activity that tends to promote social community. People do come together in a shopping center, sometimes as a cluster of teenagers out exploring a Saturday afternoon, or a group of adults who may go there because they all have the same favorite restaurant on a Friday evening. It just happens to be in the parking lot of the large retail center. Or there are special events. A couple of weeks from now, you can go hear some of the OLLI members sing at a particular mall here in Orange County if you're so inclined. But it's also a source of municipal image. If you were to ask someone from Texas or Indiana what they know about Costa Mesa, California, they would scratch their head and say, isn't that somewhere in Central America? But ask the tour director from the San Gabriel Valley who just brought over 100 people from Korea, or the other tour director who is working with massive groups from China. 3 million visitors from China and Korea come each year to Costa Mesa and probably never realize it because they only see South Coast Plaza. Well, let's start with the most important first topic. We don't all shop the same way. Women. I have to do this first because obviously women are the most important shoppers in the room and in the county and in the whole world. Women take delight in shopping. They get absorbed by it. They seek out things. They compare things. They imagine, how will this be used when I get it home? Even in the grocery store where she says, you know, I have to go down every aisle. I want to see what new things that Trader Joe has. This is very important. It's critical, right? There may be something new. Men, we're not shopping inclined, we're shopping averse. We don't shop. We go pick up stuff we think we need. A few months ago, I was repainting after a bathroom remodel, and I decided boldly I would paint before they put the cabinets in. So we picked out a color. That took a while. I went to get the paint, I got the brushes, got the pans, even bought a new ladder. That was terrific. I get home. I forgot the drop cloth. I go back. Men don't shop. We simply resupply. But it's a guy thing. It's a guy thing. We don't really want to go shopping. But women will say, but there's a sale on. There's a sale on. We need to go. There's also the issue of good news, bad news. And like Mike Stover, I want to steal this idea from him, is that it's important to sometimes get behind the headlines. Very important to get behind the headlines, because the volume with the bad news tends to overshadow the good news. So the question really is, to what extent do some of these good news, bad news messages apply to our immediate region here in Orange County? Well, let's take a look at the reality. But we'll use some data first at the national level because that's the easiest for me to grab a hold of. Just from this decade alone, just in this decade alone, JCPenney has lost one store out of every 12, or closed one store out of every 12. Sears closed 2 out of every 3. Remember the phrase when you were growing up, or your parents used to, there was one called Sears where America shops, right? Now you know what we have to do. We have to change the verb. Sears where America shopped. Well, it's logical, though, for a retailing firm to say, well, we've got to close certain stores. They're either antiquated or they're underperforming. All right. So we would expect some of that to occur. But in the case of JCPenney, their sales are falling even faster than their closing stores. In Sears, not quite so bad, but the bulk of those stores that Sears closed were small-scale stores in smaller and medium-sized cities. Places like the Central Valley of California or the farm rural areas of the Midwest. But it has happened here. Not just within the last half dozen years, but it's happened here since the 1980s. A few weeks ago, I was looking for the JCPenney in Orange. I knew it was going to close, but you may, if you're from Orange, you may drive Tustin Avenue and you may forget that it was actually there once because it doesn't front on Tustin Avenue. And maybe that was part of the problem. Location within the center. But I'm sure there were other issues. And then there was this exquisitely beautiful piece of architecture at the Nordstrom's in Santa Ana that closed after 30 years. But it's not just closure in North County. A Macy's in Irvine closed 2 years ago. The Sears in Laguna Hills closed last year. And remember nostalgically some of those places that you thought of as associated with retailing. You want to just ask the basic question, whatever happened to Bullock's? And you may be too far back to read this, but basically there's the big F word on this list. Federated. And you say, huh? Who? What? Federated was a holding company. Still is. 50 years ago, they acquired Bullock's, but kept the nameplate because the brand had cachet value and was still a magnet for customers. May Company merged with Federated 12 years ago. Other places disappear simply out of their own issues. Montgomery Ward filed for bankruptcy. Mervyn's went bankrupt about 10 years ago. Robinson's, remember when briefly Robinson's became Robinson's May, and then May became Macy's and so on. Why do we keep the name Macy's? Because it has more customer magnetism than to say, come to Federated. Yeah, it's pretty hard to say we're sponsoring the Federated Thanksgiving Day Parade. Just doesn't quite work. But it also happens with small, local, and regionally owned retailers as well. Is anyone in here from La Habra Heights, La Habra, Whittier? Okay. La Mirada? You remember Henshaw's? Henshaw's was a fixture from the 1950s up until really the time of the Whittier earthquake in the late 80s. Gone. We used to buy Boy Scout equipment at Henshaw's because they had a specialty Boy Scout store inside. Gone. All gone. So, what about interpreting today's retail landscape? Let's not lament those that are no longer with us. Let's look at what's there now. This is more legible than the other version. Retail centers exist in a fairly structured, logical pattern. If we just knock off the oddities and begin at the bottom and work our way up. I don't particularly like using the term mall because people get confused by it. Mainly because they have an image of a particular case example, and that's the lens through which they want to interpret the whole world. It's got to be enclosed, and it has to have a Macy's at one end, and a Sears at the other, and a Nordstrom's, et cetera, et cetera. No. Remember that retail centers, or shopping centers, begin at a very modest level with that convenience center. And yet even there, see, we dignify it with the term. It's a strip mall. Yeah, right. With 6 stores. No anchor, lots of personal services, and maybe lots of fast food. We go up a notch, and then you're dealing with the neighborhood level. The one that's anchored that has your supermarket and maybe the drugstore at the other end, you know, CVS, Rite Aid, etc., and so on. And you can think of all the different supermarket chains that sort of anchor the other side. Anywhere from 12 to 30 stores. We'll come back to a detailed description of that in a moment. Then the community level centers that perhaps draw from 4, 5, 6 miles out, where maybe then you have the one big box store, a Kohl's, or a Best Buy, or Petco, in addition to that supermarket. Then come the regional centers, and the portion of the hierarchy where people's minds are most often focused, that is the top, the regional centers, the super regional centers, and I'll come back to those in a moment. Let's start really with what's at the bottom of the heap, and what is also the most numerous, if you will. Strip malls and convenience centers. Here are 2 within a couple of miles of the university where we're sitting. In fact, one is 3 blocks away. That's the one on the right. But generally, we don't even think about these as having names. They're just there. They're by the traffic light. Not too easy to get into, not too easy to get out of. There's one not too far from our neighborhood that always puzzles me because nobody thinks of it really as the Rolling Hills Shopping Center. It's also known as the Cigarette Plaza. That's what the sign says. But what's there? You have the beauty parlor. You have a barber shop. You have the all-important tattoo shop. And then, of course, the place where you can get your nails done. Personal services, you see? You can get all kinds of things done there. Get your shoes repaired, get some taken off, you get some things painted, and pick up a t-shirt on your way out. Strip malls really do reflect the character of the neighborhoods that they are associated with. This one, which is probably the closest one to where you're sitting right now, has a dozen stores. I think 9 of them offer something that they call food. And remembering that it's close to a campus, what else is there? A cell phone outlet. Verizon is still holding out hope, you see, that they can get customers from the Cal State community. Or on the opposite side of campus, over on Placentia Boulevard, Topaz Plaza. Not serving students so much as serving the Hispanic population of the immediate neighborhood in the apartment complexes. A La Bodega, a Carniceria, and of course, the donut shop. Neighborhood shopping centers, though, are those places that basically provide us with everyday goods and services that we need. We visit them regularly, we take them for granted, and so on. They've got the grocery store or a super drug, or one of the two at least. Maybe a bank out in the parking lot. Maybe if you're lucky, 2 banks. Plenty of fast food in the front. So after you get your groceries, you can hop on out, grab something to drink. Anywhere from 50 to 150,000 square feet, drawing customers from probably no more than 2 to 3 miles, but perhaps occasionally a little bit further depending upon the nature of the stores. Some OLLI members consider this to be their neighborhood center, the one on the left at Morningside Plaza, anchored by Stater Brothers, UPS, and so on. But again, notice that there are indeed available restaurants and some other specialty stores there. You could even pick up a bird before noon if you want at the Early Bird. Or on the other side, the Dollar Tree, the Smart and Final, and so on. But notice, think back 30 to 40 years ago, there was a logic in which you felt there was the butcher, there was the bakery store, there was the grocery store, there was the bank. Now they've come back to the general store. They're all under one roof. And if you go further up the street, you can get to Starbucks inside the Ralphs. You see? It's all there. I couldn't capture it in a single photo, so I cut and pasted, but they are all there. That's at the intersection of Brea Boulevard and Bastion Shore, if you're wondering where I am. Oh, we're still there. Sometimes you have to understand stores cluster because of certain affinities. I picked up some milk early this morning before it was light out. And you know, some of these have well-lit signs and some don't. And sure enough, the Smoke Inn was lit up. Next door is the urgent care and a dentist on the other side of it. But don't forget, there's still a nail place there. Other critical things, you see, that we need to have taken care of every day. You got to get a haircut. Nails and spa. Eyebrow thread. I don't understand. The Brea Gateway. Again, inside the Wells Fargo Bank. One notch up, community level retail centers. Now notice that they're drawing from a wider area, perhaps as much as 5, 6, 8, 10 miles out. You get the same anchors, but now we're adding a discounter, or maybe more than one discounter, a big box, perhaps even a small theater complex, and fewer of those personal services. These could be on the order of 200,000 to 450,000 square feet. In acreage terms, what that means is something between 6 and 20 acres, or maybe even 30 acres max. Again, not too far from us. We'll start with the one on the right. Placentia Town Center on Yorba Linda Boulevard. Here you have CVS Pharmacy, a Ross, a Marshalls, you see. A couple of major discounters, but again, still some restaurants in there. The Metro Center, down at Harbor Boulevard and Orangethorpe in South Fullerton. A supermarket, but a pet store and Party City. The Crossroads near us, again, on Yorba Linda Boulevard, not too far from Placentia Town Center. Ralph's and a Kohl's. So you get it that the small stores need these large stores to attract customers. That's why the larger stores typically are considered anchors. And the viability of the center depends upon your plan to retain those anchors and for them to be healthy. In the past 5 years, I've done 2 large projects on retail analysis, and one of my favorite places to go visit is a very confusing little center in northeast Anaheim down on Lincoln and State College. And they call it Anaheim Town Square, which is interesting in and of itself, see, because the heart of downtown is 2 miles further to the west. Kmart was there, not anymore. Ralph's Supermarket was there, not anymore. What's there now? Northgate Gonzales Market is there with its, not bakery, but a Pandaria. 99 cents only. And this is a layout of the entire center with 3 big yellow blobs, or 4 yellow blobs, telling you what's vacant and available. Well, what happens with the vacant stores? Oh, you put in a pop-up where you can go celebrate the spirit of Halloween. But something new is coming in those vacant stores. A Golden Corral buffet restaurant and Target. Regional centers, though, are where our minds typically focus when we think about shopping centers and shopping areas. Again, as I said earlier, it's the general merchandise chains, but here, it's general merchandise, fashion, big box, and maybe even a theater complex. Could have a draw that's as far out as 10 or 15 miles, depending upon your population densities. The Village at Orange. A year ago, the number in the lower right-hand corner was a little different. I had to shave 130,000 square feet off of it when we closed Penny's. But I was able to crop Penny's out of the photograph because it would have been up at the top. Walmart at one end, Sears at the other end. Yes, Trader Joe's is part of the same ownership, who owns the center and rents the space out to these particular tenants. The Village, this is what you see from the front side, and then the back side once again. But I want to spend a couple of minutes really sharing with you some details about a local super regional success story, and that is the Brea Mall. $1,300,000 every day is either spent or charged at the Brea Mall. It's not the largest, it's not the second largest, it's not even the third largest shopping center in Orange County. It happens to be the fourth. But it does have 5 anchors. It opened a few months after we moved to Fullerton. At that time, it was half the size that it is now. This is what it looks like now from the air, except those labels are not on the roof. I put them on, just so you would know where we are. Oh, come back to gender differences in shopping behavior. We men have been relegated to a different store. Macy's Men's, Children's, and Home. The other one is almost exclusively women's fashions. The Brea Mall was actually developed and initially owned by a group called Homart Company, H-O-M-A-R-T, which is a subsidiary of Sears. Homart also built the Mission Viejo Mall and the Westminster Mall. When Homart built it, the intention was to have 3 anchors: Sears, Broadway, and May Company. No, the M does not stand for Macy's. It was May Company. This is the status in 1978. It also included at that time a 4 screens, wow, in one building. That was a novelty 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And an ice rink. Didn't take long for the Homart Company to realize that movie theaters and ice rinks don't generate a whole lot of profit. So let's convert the ice rink into something more valuable. We'll call it a food court. Nordstrom's comes to Orange County, opens its second store here in the Brea Mall. But in fact, what you see with the N on top is not the first Nordstrom's in Brea Mall. It's 180,000 square feet that they built 3 years after they opened the first one, which was so popular and too small, they decided to build this one double the size, 3 stories high. But wait a minute, you start going up and you start expanding, what do you have to do? You need parking. So the city of Brea says, yeah, we can help with that. After all, we realigned State College Boulevard for you. We bought some properties for you. We gave them back to you at a discount. Sure. Because we know the sales tax generating potential of this and the increased property value by doing so. By then it's up to almost 1 million square feet. The prominent anchors come to 2,000. Homart says, you know, we'd love to have another anchor there. City of Brea says, no, you don't have enough parking. They said, look, here are the financials on this. Several of us were involved in reviewing those financials. We came back and said, look, if you do this and do that and do this, and help with the parking, it'll pay off in about 6 years. So, a third parking structure was built. So now you look at the map and you say, yeah, but I still can't find a place to park there on a Saturday afternoon. It's very simple. Don't go on a Friday or Saturday afternoon. Go some other time during the week. There is a little secret, though, that I'll share with some of you if you go to the OLLI holiday luncheon in a month or so, because there is also parking underneath that big boxy building up in the top center, which happens to be the Embassy Suites Hotel, which was built on air rights above the land owned by the city of Brea. Brea, with its shopping center, and now with that, in the 1980s moved its City Hall, of course, so they could keep a more watchful eye on what's going on over there. So here's Macy's. Now, how do you refine a shopping center that's already reached some sense of maturity? Well, one is you can begin to put kiosks out in the hallways. Most shoppers just love those kiosks anyway. Would you like to try a sample? Would you like to try this? Come on, you know, whatever. Or while your car's in the parking structure, we'll wash it and detail it for you. So we haven't added any square footage, but we've added revenue generators. Other strengths here that I've listed that you can really pay some attention to later on. But one thing I do want to point out is this, that Brea Mall does not thrive because of Brea and Fullerton. It thrives because it draws customers from Yorba Linda, from Placentia, from La Habra Heights, from Diamond Bar, and from Chino Hills. They don't care about the county line because, after all, the 57 freeway comes downhill to Brea. So where does that leave us in this hierarchy? In this hierarchy, clearly it is still very important because they're all different sizes. The only way to do some comparisons is by looking at their sales per square foot per year. And this is the latest data that we have. South Coast Plaza doing over $600 per square foot. Fashion Island somewhere around $470. Brea Mall a little bit under $400 per square foot. Now you see something peculiar about this. You have this same map in your handouts, and there are little notations after the bars with a T and a W and a C. What on earth does that mean? It means that you have something that is a non-traditional or non-historic anchor there. T is for Target, C is for Costco, and W is for the Walmart. So in other words, discounters have come to the mall because shoppers are going to the discounters. So how do you make your mall survive or enable your mall to survive? You, in a sense, follow the customers by dragging them in this particular route. But rather than dwell on the numbers, what I think is just as fun is to be a landscape geographer that is interpreting the landscape. What are these signs and symbols telling us? And first and foremost, you have to accept the fact that shopping centers are private spaces. They're private spaces and they are marketed, though, as public places. And if you don't believe me, go up Imperial, go past the south edge of Brea Mall, turn right on Randolph. Turn right on Randolph and take the first entry in. And you will see this series of giant signs. There are several of them. But don't worry, there's a camera watching you. I'll come back to that in a moment. It says, notice to the public the property is private property and so on. And you can't read all the fine print down below, but it basically says you should not be there for any express purpose other than shopping. But I know how to do that when they're not watching. Smaller centers have the same kind of message, sometimes with a sign attached that says, no CSUF parking. Why do we like shopping centers? Well, one, they're secure. But there's surveillance going on too. There's surveillance to help reduce the probability of car theft. Some cases, those people presenting you petitions to put things on the ballot are banned. In other cases, they're allowed, depending upon where you are. But outside that same Ralph's that I showed you recently, this is Brea also, there are a couple of cameras. So be sure to wave to the cameras when you go in. It's here. The ones on the right and on the left are actually from the Brea Mall. But I like the two at Albertsons, which I noticed a couple of weeks ago, because you think, well, what does a grocery store need with cameras anyway? Are you going to steal the box of Kellogg's Special K? Oh, Oh, I get it now. It's pumpkin thievery. It's pumpkin thievery that we have to cut down on. Yep, there's the camera. And do you know what? Yesterday, they were gone. They were gone. I hope they got some good shots. What else do malls tell us? Malls tell us about, come here because we represent past times and we can take you to distant places. Now think about this. Here's a small center, strip mall, called the Brea Town Center. The oil derrick tells us about the past history of Brea, but notice the spelling of town center. The British have always been very dignified. It's town with the E at the end. It's center with the E at the end. And it's anchored by a Jamba Juice. Past times. Past times takes us back to the 19th century at the Saddle Ranch Chop House. Try to figure this out. Was the food that bad that he had to escape? Or was he trying to get out without paying the bill? We'll never know. But he's still there waiting for you. And you thought it was simply an outlet center. You didn't look very hard, did you? Past memories of our own. When you go shopping, you can be forever young or forever 21. You will achieve the ultimate salvation through shopping. That's presented to you, by the way, by the Irvine Company. Speaking of the Irvine Company, I have to beat up on them for a moment. I don't know why, I just do. At the Spectrum Center, Don Brenn's idea was to try to replicate a Spanish-Moroccan bazaar. And there's a lot of tile work and a lot of architectural treatment that looks very similar to those kinds of architectural themes. And part of this also is through replication of fountains. And here is their version of El Corte Leones. El Corte Leones, or the Court of the Lions. The Court of the Lions is a very, very famous fountain in Granada, Spain. We saw it live when our daughter was studying there for her junior year abroad. The Court of the Lions in Irvine, twice as big. Fidelity in recreating a distant place. Or you can step into Italy if you don't want to go to Spain. Step into Italy by going to Bella Terra in Huntington Beach. How do we know where we are? Well, it says you're on Via Mercato. You're on a shopping street. The shopping center is also an entertainment hub. You've seen kids wearing the t-shirts that say Vans Off the Wall. Well, there is a place called Vans Off the Wall. It's an indoor skate park. And a few weeks ago, I talked to this young family from Utah. The father was carrying his skateboard, the son was carrying his skateboard, and the daughter was dutifully carrying 2 skate helmets. They had put this as part of their vacation agenda, was to go to Vans in Orange. That same center, though, you can go into the Guitar Center, and I like to play anything inside. Yeah, right. We'll see. It also contains the largest multiplex. 30 screens. 30 screens. You can see the same show 6 times in one day. In a different seat. In a different little box. Of course, evil is trending. Maybe that should be the subtext of the mall. Shopping centers also can be used to nurture social community through special events. Perhaps while the wife is shopping, the other parent and the child are looking at the fountain, enjoying the day. Or housewives socializing with each other on a nice afternoon. Or special events. I call it music at the mall, or music at the shopping center. Usually it's a pianist, a guitar player, a singer, what have you. But here, on September 25th, you had ballerinas, children's ballerinas. But there are times that the signs and signals sent by the mall are a little confusing. That same center just this fall sponsored a surf dog pooch party. Come and compete in this dog competition with a pups fashion show. And 30 feet away was a sign that said, "No pets allowed." I don't know. But the mall conveys a sense of magic. And it's a magic that is most evident really at night and most evident among young shoppers, young consumers particularly. And I want to share one story that an acquaintance sent me not long ago that describes the magic of the mall. And not really in a contemporary sense either. Henshaw's department store was a household word, highly respected in Whittier. They had live decorated Christmas trees throughout the store, and one year there was even one flocked white tree hanging upside down from the second floor. I vividly remember going there to visit Santa in his big chair. Would be led in by a group of pixies to a special gift section that they called the red carpet. Now that was a store that appreciated customer service because they even had an area where young children could shop for their parents. They're getting ready again. They're getting ready for the season. Still, remember, it's a controlled environment. It's a private space being marketed as a public place, so please, even if you bring your kids there, don't let them play on the grass. What about the rise of the discounters? I think I'm getting there. We have a love-hate relationship with discounters. As one acquaintance put it a few weeks ago, you know, I really don't like coming to Walmart, but I love the prices. Or as another person said, I really hate to go to Costco on a Saturday because you can't find a place to park. What have we got? We have about 6 of these to go along with the 6 general merchandisers. How did they get to be here? And let's take a close-up look at Costco, Target, and the others. Well, discounters basically had 3 roots. One is certain discount chains grew out of the bargain basement tradition of the East Coast. The bargain basement, perhaps the best known of these, was called Fellini's in Boston. Target grew out of the bargain basement tradition as a subsidiary of Dayton's, which later became Dayton-Hudson. And then a few years ago, they renamed the entire corporation to Target because it had more market appeal. 1962, suburban Minneapolis. Or other discounters were simply an extension of the 5 and dime, the discount variety store. Kmart was a subsidiary of Kresge's. Even Sam Walton got his roots as managing a Ben Franklin 5 and dime. Once again, the first Walmart discount store, same year that Target appears, except Walton's idea was not the suburbs, but small cities in the South. Then we have the third route. The third route was membership. Membership clubs initially were open perhaps to government employees, educational workers, those viewed as having a steady income, reliable middle class who were probably going to be certain to pay the bills later on. Price Club began in such a fashion in San Diego. Later merged with Costco out of the Seattle area. Sam's Club is a division of Walmart. You may not know that. Sam's Club is a division of Walmart. Opened their first store ironically the same year that Costco opened in the Seattle area. So how have discounters fared? You saw the diagrams of how the mass merchandisers have fared. Well, take a look. Costco's growing like gangbusters this decade nationally. Target's had a loss of about, or excuse me, Kmart's had a loss of about 50% of its stores. Walmart's gained by about 35 to 40%. And Sam's Club is kind of trucking along, growing as well. But let's look at the dollars. Now think about this for a moment. In a given year, the Costco chain generates more revenue than Macy's, JCPenney, Sears, and Nordstrom's combined. They love your little blue and white card, don't they? For 60 bucks, you can become part of that crowd. Target, doing reasonably well, but not growing. Walmart continues to grow in volume. A lot of people mistakenly mess up when they start trying to analyze retailing, because Walmart as a company generates 2/3 of its business within the U.S., 1/3 outside the U.S. You have to separate those things out. These are only U.S. sales, only U.S. figures that I'm giving you. The last one standing in Orange County. Has anyone ever been there besides me? You would say, why bother, right?
Where's it at?
It's in the same city which has Orange County's largest shopping center, Costa Mesa. And it's only about 3 miles away from South Coast Plaza. But look at it. Discounters are thriving, even on a Thursday. She wonders what I go out and shoot photos of, and now I have to show her. Because it's here, watching the cars in the gas line at Costco. This was not Saturday. This was not a Thursday. This was a Wednesday mid-afternoon, and I counted 41 cars at 2:30. How about that?
And I take it that wasn't on Tuesday.
No, this was weeks. This was not yesterday or this week. This was a couple months ago. Target locations. Kind of looks like the map of measles around Orange County. But again, you can get a sense here of the semi-emptiness in South County. Again, reflecting lower population densities, basically, than what you have here in the North County. But some very close to their kindred folk in the same chain. What's Target doing now? To me, this sort of symbolizes the future of the discounters and maybe even the future of a lot of shopping centers. Downsizing. How do we know they're downsizing? In these new, smaller format stores, Target is using a small t, and indeed small print. Now that symbolizes, that sends a message. This is on Chapman and Orange, by the way. It opened on the 17th or 18th of October. Check it out. No, I'm not supposed to say those kind of things. Anyway, that's where it is. Save money, live better, America's largest retailer, Walmart. But remember, be sure to get your flu shot in their pharmacy department. Here's where it started, in the Mid-South and coastal Texas and Louisiana. This was the early 1980s, new stores that they opened. This was the late 1980s. You see it spreading even further across the South, particularly into Florida, and then through a belt up into the Midwest and the Carolinas. Our first Walmart. Trivia question number 2. Where is it?
Very Mall?
No. The hint is it's located in the same center which was Orange County's first shopping mall, just off the 5 freeway at Euclid in Anaheim. We got our first Walmart in 1994. and there are 15 in Orange County today. Their latest redirection, similarly, downsizing, opening up neighborhood markets, not trying to be all things to all people, and often going in where some of the chain supermarkets like Albertsons and Ralph's had been previously. Sam's Club, once again, reminding us that you can find just about any type of goods or services there that you want. They'll put the tires on, but they won't check your oil. Oh well. Another gas line? Similarly, weekday, not many people there yet. But this is new. This is only a couple of months old. So give them time. People will find it. Where's Walmart? Here's where they are. One of the things that I would suggest really is to try to understand here that Walmart draws people not simply because of prices. It draws people because it has a tremendous variety of goods and services inside that store, and they have long hours. All the super centers on here are open at least until midnight. There are several that are open 24 hours. So the opportunities are there for people who want and need to patronize that. What about these versus the legacy stores? On a store-by-store basis, Costco does twice as much, more than twice as much as a Walmart. Now, come back to the idea of anonymity for a moment. Think if you're the city that decides, look, we've got some new land that we've somehow come into, like large industrial areas that are now vacant. Do we try to get them all? Do we try to get a large center? Or do we try for a Costco and a Sam's Club? Or a Target and a Walmart? Or whatever. I spoke with a former manager of Costco not long ago, who let me know that in fact it's not $151 million a year per store in Orange County. It's closer to $200 million per year in each store. Now think if you're a city like Tustin, which has 2 Costco's, or Laguna Niguel, which has 2 Costco's. All the soccer moms from South County, all the Little League parents from South County must be going to Costco because that's what's generating their survival. Put all the discounters together on a single map and this is what it looks like. And you see one thing out of it is clusters. The discounters themselves are starting to cluster, and cluster in ways that we wouldn't have even imagined. And some of that clustering leads to the creation of power centers, power retailers, 2 or more big discounters. Other things like Best Buy that can kill a whole category, or Babies R Us. And then again, a multiplex, drawing half a dozen to 12 miles out. Dramatic turnaround in the economy of the city of La Habra since 2000. Sparked in part by the opening of the one center. A Walmart superstore, 24 hours a day. Lowe's Home Improvement, a Sam's Club, a Kohl's, all in this one center. Why do we call them power centers? It's because not they have 100 stores, but they have very large stores that attract large numbers of customers and fill up 80 to 90% of the total land area. Westridge. Brea Union Plaza, north and east of Brea Mall. Some of you, I suspect, have been there. Or a hybrid. The district at Tustin Legacy. Remember the helicopter base? This is on the corner. Southeast corner of the former MCAS Tustin. It's a power center, as evidenced by Target, Lowe's, and Costco up on the north end. Interestingly, the street that divides it from the rest of the center, it's all still under one management, divides it is called Park Avenue. I think that's intriguing. But then there are 2 centers down below. There is your entertainment center around the movie theater with a lot of little restaurants, and then a neighborhood scale center anchored by a Whole Foods. So really at this one center, you have multiple options for getting groceries. You can spend the whole check in one place, or you can go into Costco and fight the crowd, or you can go to Target, or you can do all three. It's still early in the month.
Why is it called hybrid power?
It's a hybrid in the sense that a power center has those large magnets, Costco, Lowe's, etc. It's also a neighborhood center in the case of the small shops down by the Whole Foods. It's an entertainment center. It doesn't fit traditional classifications of a shopping center. Students used to ask me, well, and even some people in the general public would ask, well, isn't Orange County all built out? Are we done? Do we need more shopping centers? I've felt for 25 years that we're overbuilt, but that's another story. But remember that land use changes. Land use changes and land areas can be repurposed for infill sites. Some of you I know may have worked for Chevron or Union Oil at one of the centers that now is covered by a shopping center. Some of you may have in fact been in the Marine Corps and served at Tustin. Some of you may have gone to see the races at Los Alamitos. By the way, Los Alamitos Race Course, it's not in Los Alamitos, it's in Cyprus. And they took part of the parking lot about 15 years ago and put a Costco on it. Or if you'd worked at Hughes in Southwest Fullerton, it's now Amridge Heights with a 160,000 square foot Target on it. So, land uses can change even if population levels don't, and even if you think everything's done. What about those price pointers? 99 cents only in Dollar Tree. 99 cents only. You can find just about anything for the price-sensitive consumer. I got part of my Halloween costume there last year. I like their label in their marketing, a fun treasure hunt shopping experience. You never know what they'll find, and it'll probably end up in somebody's costume in a performing arts group somewhere. $5 million per year per store. The Dollar Tree generates far less revenue, but there they are. But chains don't rule the world necessarily. They just cover 60 locations in Orange County. And then the private sector comes in and says, I can beat your dollar store, we'll go down to 99. I can beat your 99, we'll go down to 98. Or perhaps price isn't the issue. The issue is maintaining Japanese quality. What about the internet retailing? I do need to say a little bit about this, and then 10 minutes, and then I'll take questions, okay? Even the notion of internet shopping has changed within the last half dozen years. It's become larger and broader in scope. Corporate leaders may not be who you think they are, but we do know that Amazon is still the elephant in the living room. Roughly 1 of 8 Americans do shop online, and about half of all adults say that they shop online at least once a week, or perhaps a few times a month at least. Even in our age cohort, almost 60%, 59% have bought something online. But the younger cohort is more willing to use their cell phones or perhaps some other social media outlet. How big is e-commerce? Every month, the federal government surveys 10,000 businesses, including all of the large companies that you could think of. 10,000. Not just those that do e-commerce, not just Land's End or Home Shopping Network or Amazon, but includes Nordstrom, Sears, JCPenney's, May Company, Walmart, et cetera, et cetera. Estimating this year we're going to hit probably $450 billion in internet sales. As large as that number seems, it's only about 9% this year. Last year it was 8%. It's a little over 9% of all U.S. retailing is done through internet purchases. Much smaller than most people really believe or accept. But the companies are being honest in reporting it. Nordstrom's and Macy's, however, have taken a proactive stance and said, we need, in order to survive and thrive, we need to address our internet presence. 1 out of 4 dollars spent on Nordstrom's is spent through internet purchases. And this just means that the act of purchase. You may purchase it online, but pick it up in the store. You may look at it in the store and wake up your mind when you get home and then click, buy now. What matters? It's price, information, familiarity, those kinds of things. Is it all strictly about convenience? No. In fact, out of 8 or 9 possible choices, only about 40% of the people surveyed said, oh, I need to do this simply because I don't want to make the trip to the store. Amazon is now selling Kenmore appliances, which were always the domain of Sears. It may not work because, in fact, 85% of people say they'd rather buy their major appliances in the store. They want to see it. They want to know how it operates. They're more willing to buy the books, the toys, and the games, and the computers online. Fine. But that. Let's look at Amazon. Have you figured it out yet? Have you figured it out? What's the smile all about?
It's from A to Z.
We sell everything from A to Z.
It's a smile on your face.
That's right. Amazon puts a smile on your face and a dent in your credit card. America's e-commerce conglomerate. 4 principles. It's customer-centered, it's passion for invention, and so on. But those 2 are really the most dominant ones. If you ever want to read a good business book that's balanced, not a paean to the founder of the company and not a hatchet job on all the things that they do wrong, look at Brad Stone's well-balanced, thoroughly analytical book, simply called The Everything Store. The guiding principles are one way in which you could actually look at how can we dissect Amazon. Well, it's big. 136 billion last year, probably will hit 165 billion this year. But remember, they're international too. 66% in the US. The rest is overseas. But meteoric rise in the last 10 years. Now, would you invest in a company that lost money every year for the first 7? Would you invest in an $80 billion a year company that didn't turn a profit in 2014? A lot of stockholders have said, heck yes, because I believe. Amazing. Look at all the innovations. Did you know that the Kindle e-reader by Amazon was introduced 3 years ahead of the iPad and the Nook? They are innovators. One-click shopping. They have a patent on that. And it's based upon your previous searches and your previous information you've given them from other shopping that you've done. Continuous improvement in their fulfillment centers. The Kiva robots. Oh, and we don't really have enough time for me to play it for you today, but there are 2 delightful, absolutely delightful videos that you should go onto YouTube and look at. One is simply called A Day in the Life of a Kiva Robot, that explains it. 3.5 minutes long. The other is simply called Kiva Robots Dance to the Nutcracker. And it's 1 minute and it's beautiful. If I get done, I'll try and run it up. But now, of course, a lot of other customer innovations and services, like Alexa's now almost 3 years old. But they've also begun to revive their brick and mortar bookstores. So once again, diversification. not always going in one direction. So what does Jeff Bezos say? And it is Bezos, not Bezos. Who says some of these things will pay off, others won't. But that's all right, because we're in it for the long haul. Every day is day one. You have to strive to do innovative things, to create new goods and services or new processes for those goods and services. The fulfillment centers. We've got 9 of these now in Southern California. Location, there's a geography behind the location of them as well. Orange County just got its first one this past summer. It's almost invisible, and I think that's by design. It is in Irvine, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of the street. I'm a senior moment. But anyway, inside, what is absolutely fascinating about this is your concept of the warehouse industry has to be changed, because it's automated now with these little robots that corkscrew up, lift a pod, and then take the pods down an electronic highway without running into bumping each other. And there is a picker at the end who takes it off and puts it in another bin, and then a boxer further down who assembles it all. And they spent something like $700 million to buy Kiva Systems about 5 years ago. And these systems are used by virtually all large distributive companies now. Amazon is the biggest customer for the U.S. Postal Service. They provide about 15 to 20% of the volume for UPS and FedEx. Don't worry about drones, but drones have a place. They've already been used in some emergency situations, in flood relief and in earthquake relief, delivering water and medical supplies to isolated areas. But if you live in an apartment or you're not home and you're worried about somebody stealing that box off your porch, you can have it sent to an Amazon locker. There is one here on this campus, and you can, in fact, tell it to ship it to that locker rather than to my home. There are several 7-Eleven stores in Orange County that have Amazon lockers too. What is that? It's an innovation. It's an innovation about delivery, you see. But again, Amazon is not just in the business of retail products. It's in the business of providing all these new kinds of services. Whether it's a service in Amazon Prime, that's a compressed version, or other subscription services like Amazon Music Unlimited, which costs me $3.99 a month. It's a third-party seller to other companies. And then there's Amazon Web Services. If you want to find out more about the cloud, read up on Amazon Web Services, or AWS, because their clients include many federal agencies, the State Department, NASA, CIA. Their clients also historically included Target. Their clients include Nordstrom's. They provide the computing power and the data storage and the computer tracking for a lot of companies that are out there through their own data centers. And that is in fact projected to generate almost as much volume this year as all of the sales that Nordstrom's Corporation put together. This is just their web services at Amazon. Expected to grow. That's the growth center within Amazon. And just so you remember, when you get the box and it says free delivery, free reading, free listing, no, small print, you've probably already paid for it. Major land use impacts on Seattle, just a few blocks from where my mother-in-law lives. And I've watched it. We've seen the traffic imprints of this. It's absolutely astonishing. You may have read about their search for a new secondary headquarters. That search process had a limited time window. It was something like 30 days or 45 days to put together a proposal, submit it, whatever. And you couldn't send anything. You couldn't send a box of fruit or a package of whatever. It just simply had to be the proposal. That generated over 200 proposals. So, where do we stand? Retailing in Orange County is healthy. Market is probably saturated. But we are at a stage of maturity. Change is inevitable. The question is how businesses respond to that change, how local government responds, and more importantly, how you and I as consumers will respond to those changes. Laguna Hills Mall, built in 1973, one of the last to undergo renovation, now is rebranding, rebannering, calling itself the Five Lagunas. You figure out what the five are. I have. Not easy. The Five Lagunas. Some legacy firms will close. Some centers will be at risk. How will they adapt? One innovation that we have seen is indeed bringing more customers into that underutilized parking lot by putting apartments on it. Typically 4 stories, maybe 5 stories. These are at densities of 60 to 80 units per acre. And it's not just occurred here in Fullerton. It's occurred in Orange. It's occurred in Huntington Beach. And has occurred in Laguna Hills. A new land use strategy that is difficult for us to kind of get our hands around because it is so different from the landscape we're accustomed to viewing. Neither Walmart nor Amazon are taking over the retail world. Boy, that's comforting. Amazon only accounts for 23% of all internet retailing right now. Walmart accounts for less than 15% of all standard store retailing. So, change is on the way. You choose, we shop, we deliver. A lot of secondary delivery companies now. Adaptive reuse. A bowling alley, a fitness center on either side of a high cholesterol restaurant where a Macy's store used to be. Depends on the choices we make. What kind of experiences we want. Do you want to dine in while eating or while watching the movie? Or do you want to just look at the koi pond with your grandkids? It's more about experiences than the stuff we buy. Let me give you a short passage from the Book of Walton, this being close to the holiday season. The snowbirds came in their motorhomes and fifth-wheelers from Alberta and British Columbia and Montana. They came to see the grand floral parade or to witness the athletic games at the bowl. But alas, there was no room at the Marriott. The Holiday Inn was full. But they found space and supplies at the local Walmart. Thank you.